So let's talk a little bit about Gilgamesh, the major character of the epic. He was the first ruler of the first post-Diluvian dynasty of Uruk, and scholars have established that he was an actual king. He did live and reign in Uruk during the first half of the third millennium, between 2700 and 2500 BC. He was known as a great builder, but also a great judge, a just judge. Prayers were addressed to him, and he was often invoked through prayers and ritual. And he's often associated with a major expansion of the city of Uruk, the major expansion of the ziggurat, along with the building of the Great Wall of Uruk. He's two parts God and one part man, according to the narrative, surpassing all other kings, we're told. He's superior to others in beauty and strength. And his mother was a goddess. His father was a mortal king. And he's supernaturally strong, but he also, and this is the most important thing to keep in mind, is that he is human. He has the human qualities of fear, anger, jealousy, arrogance, competitiveness. Here is a real image of Gilgamesh. It shows him subduing a lion, a common pose for the great warrior king. Long hair, a beard shows his strength as well as his physical perfection. So let's move to the narrative, and let's start in this lecture with Gilgamesh and Enkidu, the two main characters. Let's introduce who they are. Let's introduce how the narrative introduces them to us, and let's do a little bit of close reading to understand these characters and to think about the relationship between the two of them, and this will set up the narrative so that you can kind of track and trace how their relationship develops as you keep reading. So in this, one of the first lines in Tablet 1, lines 28 to 33, we get a description of Gilgamesh. And notice immediately here the third person point of view and the emphasis on Gilgamesh's strength. Supreme over other kings, lordly in appearance. He is the hero, born of Uruk, the goring wild bull. He walks out in front, the leader, and walks at the rear, trusted by his companions. Mighty Net, protector of his people. Raging flood wave who destroys even walls of stone. So we get an emphasis on his appearance. We get an emphasis on his strength, the goring wild bull. We're also shown that he walks out in front as the leader of his people, but he also walks at the rear, trusted by his companions. That's an interesting line there, right? Not only is he the first one into battle, but he is at the rear. He is making sure that everybody, all of his people, are with him. He's protecting his people like a mighty net. And at the same time, he's destructive. He destroys walls of stone. The bronze bull was an image in ancient Sumeria of great physical strength, power, violence. And with Gilgamesh, we have a character in the beginning who is intimidating physically. But we get another description here where the emphasis again is on his awesomeness to perfection. He's 2/3 of him is God, 1/3 of him is human. The great goddess Aruru designed the model for his body. She prepared his form, beautiful handsomeness of men, perfect. So Gilgamesh, on the outside, he carries the form and appearance of a god. And on the inside, however, we start to get the glimpses of his human weakness, his human flaws. And the main flaw in the early tablet is a kind of arrogance, his taking of his strength and power too far. And we start to see glimpses of this in lines 54 to 58 and 62 to 64. He walks around in the enclosure of Uruk like a wild bull. He makes himself mighty, head raised over others. So here the strength starts to be compared with his relationship with other people. He is mighty, he is strong like a bull, but his head is raised over other people. There is no rival who can raise his weapon against him. His fellows stand at the alert, attentive to his orders. And the men of Uruk become anxious in... There we have an ellipses, right? The men of Uruk become anxious in what? In his presence, in the face of his commands. We're not quite sure, right? But the key element there is that people are becoming anxious around Gilgamesh. The poet continues, Gilgamesh does not leave a son to his father. Day and night he arrogantly Again, we're getting glimpses that he's not letting people alone. He's not leaving sons to his father. He himself is not leaving a legacy. He's not having children. But you could also read that as he's not leaving sons alone. He's not leaving young men alone. He's running the night arrogantly, raising his head over them. And then in the next lines, they say, Gilgamesh does not leave a girl to her mother, the daughter of the warrior, the bride of the young man. The gods keep hearing their complaints. So his arrogance he's starting to abuse his arrogance. He's starting to abuse his subjects, and his arrogance is starting to raise complaints among his people. And one of these involves sleeping with his subjects, women, on their wedding night. Now, on the one hand, this is an obvious abuse of his arrogance, right? That he is taking into his own hands other brides and grooms and deciding that he will enjoy the bride on the night of their wedding rather than the groom. He will have first right to her body. On the other hand, it's possible that this, in the context of ancient Samaria, he is carrying out his divine right. So the poet leaves it kind of ambiguous whether or not Gilgamesh is simply exercising his divine right or whether or not this is a sign of his arrogance starting to abuse his people. But even if he is exercising his divine right here, again, the right within the context of ancient Samaria, the abuse of his power and the arrogance and the anxiety that his other subjects are starting to feel is starting to wear on the people of Uruk, and they're starting to complain to the gods. And in fact, the complaints to the gods have their effect to the point where the inciting incident of the narrative becomes the gods listening to the people, and they decide to intervene in Gilgamesh's life. And this becomes the inciting incident of the entire narrative and the introduction of Enkidu. So we read here that Anu listened to the people of Uruk's complaint, and the gods called out to Aruru. So Aruru is the earth and fertility goddess. Anu is the father of the gods. So Anu is listening to the people as the father of the gods. They're complaining. And the gods called out to Aruru, who is the earth goddess, the fertility goddess. It was you, Aruru, who created mankind. Now create a Zikru to him. Now the word Zikru here means counterpart or double or equal. In other words, Enkidu, the character who will be created, a kind of counterpart to Gilgamesh, a double to Gilgamesh that will help to balance Gilgamesh's strength and arrogance with a counterpart, a friend, and will lead to the intimacy that will start to weigh aware Gilgamesh's arrogance and strength and start the journey of him coming to terms with his mortality. Let him be equal to Gilgamesh's stormy heart. Let them be a match for each other so that Uruk may find peace.